Welcome to Final Destination, the anime. A girl has just finished her favorite romance manga series, and seeing as no further volumes are being made and the series got cancelled, she decides this is as good a time as any to go commit die. However, before she can yeet herself into the afterlife, she gets called out to by this guy behind her. He tells her that what she is doing is really dangerous. She believes this guy is trying to stop her from jumping to her death, so she pulls out a knife and threatens him to stay away from her because she needs to die. She also says that if he comes any closer, he will contract a deadly disease which will surely kill him. But as she is saying all this while pointing a knife at him, the guy just walks forward into the knife. The girl screams because she didn't want to murder anyone before she dies, but the guy just grabs her and says, "Kids these days don't know how to do things anymore. If you're gonna jump off a bridge, you've got to do a flip." He then lifts her up by her face and plops her down on the other side of the bridge. For someone who just got stabbed, he seems to be acting very lively and asks what the deadly disease was going to be. Will it be like liquefying organs or spontaneous dismemberment? However, it was much worse than that. It's Final Destination. The guy falls onto a train and goes splat on the windshield. The girl sits there and cries because she has done it again and drags someone down to their death because she took too long to end herself. However, as she is still crying, the dude's head comes rolling up to her and is somehow still alive. It tells her that he finally understands what she meant by deadly disease as he repairs his body and regenerates fully. However, clothes do not come with the package, causing the girl get scared and punch him in the nuts. Don't worry, those will grow back too. She runs away from him thinking he is a zombie, but he doesn't want to let her go and grabs her, saying he isn't a zombie, but rather he is undead. He heard her mention that her disease was unluck, so he wants to ask a few questions about that. But soon after, the police begin to close in on the location due to reports of a dude going splat on a train, and right now, he's a naked man carrying a screaming girl, so he needs to get out of here. He uses his blood as rocket boots and propels himself into the sky. Later, he gives an explanation on how he was flying with his blood, and he tells her that he regenerated his legs at high speed and shot them out to use the momentum to fly, but she wasn't paying attention to his explanation because she is trying to escape. However, he didn't bring her all the way up here just to let her go. So he dangles her by her legs and says he still has some questions to ask. She is afraid that her unluck will trigger again if he keeps touching her, but it's quite the long way down if he lets go. She says it's fine since she was planning on dying today anyway, but after a brief trip on the merry-go-round, she is too scared to continue and promises to tell him everything she knows about unluck. She explains that when she was 8, her parents were about to go on a business trip together, and they said they'd be gone for a week, so she was hugging them goodbye and gave them kisses. But then an hour later, the plane went boom. From that day forward, anyone who came in direct contact with her skin got hurt in some way or the other, so she began dressing to cover up as much as possible. After saying this, the guy takes the opportunity to slip his hand under her shirt for some direct boob skin contact while still butt naked to test out the unluck's effects, and sure enough, there was somehow a plane with a load of bananas that fell right on top of the guy. The girl takes the opportunity to escape while the guy is still regenerating, but she slips on a banana and goes off the edge of the building. As she falls, she is in disbelief that her life is going to end because of a banana. She couldn't get to do anything fun or interesting, never fell in love, and No Game, No Life finally got a second season. She can't die yet. Luckily, the guy doesn't plan on letting her die so easily and flies down with his meat propulsion and sticks a bone in the wall to slow their fall. The guy tells her that he won't be letting her go so easily since he has finally found someone who might be able to put an end to his absurdly long life. If he can figure out what makes her unluck tick, he might be able to use it to create the biggest stroke of unluck that she has ever seen and maybe actually kill him for good. So now he plans to take her to his hideout to find a way to end himself. Meanwhile, some people in suits are watching him fly off and have been given the order to apprehend the girl after they have confirmed her abilities. Back at the guy's hideout, they haven't introduced themselves to each other yet, but the guy is Andy and the girl is Fuko. Andy has already tested out the change in effect with duration of contact, so Maven wants to move on to surface area and asks her to take off all her clothes for maximum surface area. Unsurprisingly, she runs off. She can handle him touching her to kill himself, but she is not mentally prepared to strip naked for him. He chases her and tells her this is only because she hasn't fully explained the ability to him, but she just doesn't want to tell him. While running, she gets her jacket caught on a hook and it comes off, revealing that she has that Rapunzel kind of hair. She can't help it since anyone who would try to cut her hair would only end up dying because of her. Hearing this, Andy grabs her chin and pulls out a hairdresser bag and begins to cut her hair. She's worried since unluck will activate as soon as he lets go of her, but he says he'll be fine. She asks him if he used to be a hairstylist and he says he was one ages ago. He finishes off her haircut and she is really happy with it. But now that the haircut is done and he has been holding her for 15 minutes, something big must be coming. A few seconds later, Amy's head is chopped off, but not because of any natural disaster. but rather because of the suit guys. They came to apprehend Fuko and were prepared with a capsule to keep Andy from regenerating. Fuko was about to tell him to let him go because she believed they came here to rescue her, but she couldn't be more wrong. They're just here to capture them for themselves. They are an organization that is meant to keep the people with strange powers like Andy and Fuko in check, and Fuko was high on their priorities list. Her power sucks the luck out of anyone that touches her, however, a layer of clothes seems to prevent that effect. Her powers are certainly dangerous, and what's worse is that they have no other applications aside from killing people, which is what they believe Andy was trying to do. However, Fuko corrects them and says the only person Andy wanted to kill was himself. The leader of the group gets agitated and tells her to shut up or he might just kill her anyway since her power is already really dangerous. But she continues to speak and thanks Andy for actually touching her without fear and being relatively kind to her. Just then, the unluck from Andy touching her from before kicks in and strikes where his head is, and also the guy that was holding the capsule. They fall into a hole, and Andy is now free to regenerate his body and do as he pleases once more. The leader tells the others not to panic even if they can't kill him outright. They can still cut him up into tiny pieces and possibly reseal him again. After all, he is still only an amateur when it comes to fighting. However, that is where they are wrong. Sure, right now, Andy is only an amateur, but that is only because he gave himself brain damage to repress some memories to save on disk space. However, if he simply regenerates that part of his brain, then 100 years of fighting experience comes rushing back to him. And with all that experience and an immortal body, no one could ever dream of winning a fight against him. Though the suit cronies were able to do some considerable damage to Andy, but he easily slashes and kills them. After that, he blocks all the memories again because his brain was starting to lag from overload. The suit guy realizes that Andy has him beat in all aspects if he were to try and fight him, so he switches to some more underhanded measures and threatens to kill Fuko if Andy doesn't cut off his head and toss it over without regenerating at all. Andy is disappointed that he doesn't get to fight the guy anymore, but if Fuko's life is on the line, then he is going to comply with the ultimatum. Fuko tells him to give up on her and just take care of himself. It's better if she dies anyway since she has hurt so many people with her powers, but Andy doesn't give a damn about her opinion. He decides to save her life, and that's what he's gonna do, even if it ends up with him in some underground laboratory. Fuko is touched that he would be willing to risk his freedom for her, despite only having known her for a total of 2 hours, so she decides to give Andy what he wants. She knows how to trigger the worst outcome of unluck, and to do that, she breaks out of her captor's grasp and jumps in the air to kiss Andy's head as it falls to the ground. Andy realizes what she just did, so holds the suit guy in place and tells Fuko to get the hell out of here quickly as he waits for what is about to come with a huge smile on his face. A freaking meteorite falls from the sky and right onto the building, blowing it up along with Andy and the suit guy. Safe to say that Andy's hideout has been destroyed and Fuko sits there, upset that Andy might actually be gone for good this time. However, he walks out of the building missing a few teeth and a sword in his chest and thanks her for the help back there. Still with his banana out. She finally introduces herself as Fuko and asks him for his name, but he doesn't remember since that was part of the repressed memories, since she can't have him going around without a name. Fuko comes up with Andy for him as a name, and he is fine with it. Andy comments on how his single kits cause all this damage, but he says it'll probably do a lot more if they smashed, and hearing that, Fuko is back to running again. Fuko had always felt like she deserved to die after all the death and destruction her ability has caused over the years, but after meeting Andy, she had felt that she had finally found someone whom she could hang around without having to worry about ending up killing him. But right now, she's starting to regret hanging around him. Andy has her backed against a wall, with his meats still hanging out, mind you, and once again asks to smash because that will likely cause unluck to trigger in the most spectacular manner imaginable. But his theory fails to take Fuko's feelings into account, and she is left racking her brain to figure out something to say before Andy is done with his stretches. Before Andy can go balls deep, Fuko blurts out that unluck is based on likability, meaning the more she likes the person, the worse the unluck is going to be. Aside from Andy and her parents, Fuko has also kissed her grandfather, whom she was really scared of, and all he got as a result was a broken ankle. He did end up dying 3 years later, but that was too much time for it to have been related to her unluck. So that proves that the more she likes the person, then the worse the unluck is going to be. And with that being the case, if Andy tries to smash her right here and now, she's going to hate him forever and he'll only get mediocre deaths from it. That made sense to Andy, and the new information causes a change to his original plans of he says he can't let her die for a while and asks her to follow him. Fukuda follows him and she gets taken to an armory which Andy just has. With all the time that he has been alive, he has had enough time to build bases all across the world for whatever he needs. This way he can deal with those suit guys if they ever come after him. Now that they are here, Andy gets down to business and has Fuko suited up with armor against basically all forms of attacks imaginable. This is a countermeasure in case those suit guys go after her again, and after the failed attack yesterday, you can definitely bet that they will be coming after her again. Fuko thinks they might have been scared off by the literal meteor falling from the sky yesterday, and while that may be true for normal people, it doesn't apply to them because they have teams of people who can defy the rules of the world like Fuko and Andy, Negators. And after the fight, they now know exactly what their abilities can do, while Andy and Fuko are still left in the dark on what they are going to have to face, so they are at a serious disadvantage. 50 years ago, the Negators actually caught Andy and did quite the number on him, having him spend 10 years in some lab while they dissected him over and over. Fuko is shocked by Andy apparently being over 50 and asks how old he really is, but Andy interjects and asks what she thinks they will do after they have captured her, or how many people will die while they try to figure out the rules of unluck. They might cut off her fingers to see if the unluck still works with severed body parts, or even forcibly smash in different positions to see what happens. They are much worse than Andy, so she has to rely on him to protect her from them, and they go on a road trip together. Fuko asks Andy if there is anywhere in particular that they are heading to, but he says they are just going where the road takes them, or in short, running forever, or until they run out of gas. Fuko is worried because that just means they will eventually get caught when they can't run away anymore, so she starts to think Andy would be better off if he just left her behind because he'll be stuck in a lab again if he gets caught. However, Andy has no intention of leaving her behind before she falls in love with him and can get him killed with unluck. Fuko appreciates him protecting her, but she says she won't be falling in love with him. However, Andy is sure it will eventually happen. While Fuko is still arguing with him, Andy notices a crack form in the sky and realizes that the organization has arrived. 50 years ago, the ones who caught him shot out from one of those warp gates, so he tells Fuko to duck as the Union busts through. A giant robot smashes Andy into the ground and tosses Fuko into a nearby wall with all the force that it used. But she is mostly unharmed thanks to all the protective gear that she has on. However, I can't say the same for Andy. Fuko tries to run to Andy's side but gets pulled back by some unknown force and finds herself stuck to this guy. She looks up at him and realizes he is one of the enemies, so she tries to get away from him in a scene that can easily be taken out of context. The guy tells the robot that he has managed to capture Fuko, so the robot tells him to kill her like they were instructed to while he captures Andy. However, a blue-haired dude doesn't want to kill Fuko yet because she is so cute. Meanwhile, Andy escapes the robot's fist and is about to strike him down with his sword, but he suddenly stops moving altogether. Fuko thinks the guy holding her captive is the cause of Andy's sudden loss of movement, but as Andy is punched backwards, he regains his movement and realizes that both of these guys have external restraining type abilities. The big guy paralyzes a person's body and the blue-haired guy can take control of your body, though Andy doesn't know exactly what they are negating to pull it off. Blue-haired guy praises him for figuring out that much of their abilities in an instant, but says knowing that isn't going to change much for him. Andy walks up to the robot and gets punched in the face, but after the punch, he is able to move again and returns the punch to the robot. This is how he will fight the ability. He will get hit and then hit back once his movement returns to him. The blue-haired guy thinks that is quite the crazy way of fighting, especially since Andy can still feel all the pain from getting hit. Fuko asks the blue-haired guy, whose name is Shen, if they are really doomed to get hunted down by the Union forever, and Shen tells her that sadly it's true. Especially since after that meteor strike, her danger level rose from a 5 to an 8 out of 10. So no matter where she and Andy go, they will always have someone coming after them, but that is still assuming that they can manage to escape them here. If that is the case, then Fuko asks why he and the robot aren't being hunted, and he explains that they are special cases because they are part of the 10 members of a special team in the Union. Once you become a part of this team, you are exempt from all pursuit under the condition that you commit yourself to carrying out missions that are assigned to you, though there are still some tests that need to be done before one can join the team. However, as the robot is about to kill Fuko, he tells her that there are no open spots in the team, and as long as there are no vacancies, there will be no new additions to the team. But just before she can be crushed under his fist, Andy speeds through to save her and says it's a great idea to join the Union since they won't be hunted down afterwards. And if it only accepts new members when there are vacancies in the team, they just need to get rid of these two to make some space. Once they join the team, he doesn't know what they will have them do, but he is sure of one thing: as long as Fuko is with him, he is not going to let her die, nor is he going to hand her over to anyone, making her blush and also possibly start falling for him. She takes off her glove and touches Andy before running away. However, before she leaves, she turns around to tell Andy that the unluck is probably going to be massive, but it's not because she's in love with him or anything baka. She continues speaking as Andy backs up closer to the two, and then a giant truck comes barreling towards them, and they are all engulfed in flames. Andy flies out and regenerates his body, but the other two also emerge unscathed from the inferno. Since that didn't work, Andy moves on to his next plan of action and has to figure out exactly what their powers are as he escapes into a building. From what he has been able to see thus far, the big guy negates all of Andy's movements once he gets into battle stance, so his power is likely unavoidable, but Andy doesn't have any information on Shen, so he thinks it will be best to wait until he has figured out his ability. But after that long thought process, he realizes that there are several sticks of dynamite beeping as a countdown reaches 0. The building collapses and Fuko is left wondering if this was part of her unluck or if it was actually just a coincidence. In the rubble, the big guy gets up and grumbles about how he would have been dead if it weren't for his suit that protected him. He wants to hurry up and get the mission over with, so he scans around and finds Andy's hand in the rubble, so he goes over and tries to restrain him. However, it was a trap and Andy appears behind him, using his finger as a gun, and shoots him in the head. Shen finally finds Andy and sees that his teammate is dead, but Andy still wants to fight, even though he has already secured himself a seat at the table, because he still needs to get one for Fuko. Fuko also arrives later and finds Andy fighting with Shen, but every hit Andy tries to land gets countered perfectly. Andy notices that Fuko is holding his sword, so he asks her to toss it over to him so that he can use it to strike Shen down. However, before Andy can strike, he suddenly stops dead in his track. Fuko thinks things are getting bad, so she tries to touch Shen to use her unluck, but he dodges that as well. Shen tells them that his power affects their minds, so there is no way that they will be able to hit him or escape from her. But since his teammate is dead, there is a seat open at the table, so he asks which one of them will be joining. Andy says if that's what it has come to, then it will be Fuko that joins them, and he is fine with getting shipped off to some lab again. Fuko thinks it is ridiculous of him to give himself up so easily, but he says he'll find a way to break out eventually, and even if she's an old lady by then, he will definitely find her before she dies. Shen thinks everything has been settled and asks Fuko to come with him, but she throws down her jacket and tells him to look away for 10 minutes. He isn't going to do that because that would undo his ability, but she says he has to because she is about to Netflix and chill with Andy, minus the Netflix part. Thanks to her unluck, she has never had any sort of romantic relationship, so now that there is someone willing to risk their freedom for her sake, she feels that it's the least she can do to give him the best shot he has got at getting killed by unluck. And if that means they have to raw dog it right here on the pavement, then so be it. Shen finds this whole situation hilarious and gives them an option so they can stay together. If they can manage to kill one of the other members of the 10, then they will both be able to join. He tells them that in Russia 3 days from now, there will be another one of them there to investigate one such occurrence negator. So if they can manage to kill that guy, then they're all set, but there will still be others coming after them in that time. With that, he takes his leave and they have their next destination set, but neither of them have passports, so they'll be hitching rides along the way. Andy also finally asks Fuko how old she is, to which she answers 18, and he says great, because that means she is allowed to drink over there, so after they're done, it'll be vodka party time. Meanwhile, there is a girl in a satellite space station who uses its cameras to look down at Earth and find a yacht with Andy and Fuko inside. Andy is really enjoying the whole ride as he got the yacht modified to make it go way faster than normal, but I can't say the same for Fuko. She is curled up under her seat because she is still afraid of the fact that other Union members will be hunting them the entire time that they are on their way to Russia. However, Andy doesn't care about any of that. He didn't pull his boat out of storage just so she can cower in fear under the chair. He pulls her out and tells her to have fun. That's an order. In the end, all of Fuko's cowering was for good reason as they are attacked by the Union members out at sea, and Andy is forced to take control of the wheel to dodge the incoming missile strikes. Fuko is sure that they are doomed since there is no way a boat can outrun a jet, but Andy doesn't seem too worried since in the worst case scenario, they can just use Unlucky to blast out of here with another natural disaster. She yells that it doesn't work like that and Unluck isn't some convenient AoE attack, but Andy tells her that it's all about how you use your ability to your advantage. He grabs a live grenade and explains that his ability can be used for a lot more than just death prevention. In this case, if he partially cuts off his arm and then regenerates a new one in the same spot, he can fire it out his hand with a grenade in it. The grenade hand blows up the jet, and Fuko thinks they are in the clear, but Andy reminds her that they still have to kill one member of the Union with the same gold emblem that Shen had. That is most likely the indicator that person is part of the 10 negators of the Union. Andy has a good idea of who some of those negators are. For one, there is the person who made the indestructible katana that Andy has unbreakable. Another one is the crazy scientist that experimented on him after he was captured 50 years ago, and the person who captured him. The last girl can create invisible barriers from nothing, which was how she was able to capture Andy in the first place. She caught his head in a barrier and left him with no space to regenerate, so it's going to be pretty bad if he has to face her. Still, he will face her regardless of the difficulty if it comes down to it. He's not going to let anyone keep them from their goal, and he still has the option of activating Unluck in the worst-case scenario. Fuko still protests that Unluck can't be used like that, but as another jet approaches, Andy says he's going to have to get a feel for the limits of Unluck before they get into a really bad situation. Fuko hears this and realizes that it means Andy is going in for another round of touching her, which he doesn't deny it. Meanwhile, we see that girl from the space station looking down and talking to herself about how much she loves Andy. I'm gonna call it here, definitely Yandere. She fires down some of her invisible barriers down to Earth and destroys the boat instantly. Andy finds himself in the water and wonders what it could have been that attacked them, however, before he can worry about that. He has to think about Fuko and rescuing her from drowning. He finds her trapped under the wreckage and swims down towards her to save her before she dies. He wedges himself under the wreckage and uses the force of his quick regeneration to create enough space to pull her out. He starts swimming to the surface, but on the way, he notices something that gives him an idea. He gets Fuko to a floating piece of the boat and resuscitates her before telling her to put her hands up as they are about to be caught. The Jet shines a spotlight on them and asks if Andy intends to surrender, to which he says he does, but he is actually just buying them some time for his plan. He wants to use Unluck to get out of this, and it will help them understand how it operates a little better. So far, every time Unluck has occurred, it pulled things in from a great distance away, like the lightning bolt and meteorite. But what was so special about these times, you ask? They were both situations where the contact between Fuko and Andy were of great value to her, so it had to pull in something that was proportional for the resulting stroke of Unluck. And this time he has found something that should be proportional to the Unluck, so that is what is likely going to happen. But hearing Andy mention this time, she is confused because she hasn't had Andy touch her yet. But that's when Andy tells her that he had to give her CPR since she had drowned and her double Ds were in the way, so he moved them. She is greatly embarrassed to find out that Andy saw and touched her opai, but then Andy tells her that even after the chest compressions, she still wasn't waking up, so he performed mouth-to-mouth on her. Fuko's embarrassment reaches a boiling point, and so does the volcano that they are currently sitting on top of as it blasts them upwards and onto the jet. Now that he is within range, Andy switches over to Demon Slayer mode for a bit and pulls off a sword strike that kills the pilot in the jet. But at the same time, he makes sure not to cut up the cockpit. So as the jet falls out of control, he climbs into the cockpit with Fuko and uses it to escape. With that, they now know that they just need to identify something that could be used by Unluck and have a proportional amount of contact to trigger it. Thanks to that, they are still free and even got a new means of transportation out of it. With this, they can make it to Russia really quickly, so they go full throttle. However, by morning, the jet initiates a self-destruct sequence since the people at Union have probably figured out that they stole the jet. Due to this, Andy and Fuko have to eject to avoid it, but are now falling through the sky. Andy is still smiling though, since he has a trick up his sleeve to land safely for Fuko at least. He lands on the ground, but breaks every single bone in his body in order and throws Fuko up to shield her from the impact. Then he just keeps running like nothing happened. Now that they've landed, he tells Fuko to keep her head down because the negator could be here any minute now, but Fuko is too mesmerized by the beautiful landscape before her. This is the first time Fuko has ever been overseas since she became a recluse after discovering her unluck, so Andy tells her she can have some time to enjoy it if she wants. The Union are more of a secret organization, so they likely won't try anything while the public is around. He tells her that he's going to go track down one of his old war buddies to see if they can help them if it comes down to it. Before he goes, Fuko asks Andy if the person that comes here to investigate is reasonable, that maybe they could talk it out, but he says he'll just kill them. He still needs to get a spot on the 10 for himself, so anyone that is careless enough to be reasonable in a situation like this isn't going to be alive. On a side note, Andy asks Fuko if she has any foods that she doesn't like because an old friend of his has a restaurant that he wants to go to, so when he gets back, that is what they'll do. But until then, she should just have some fun for once. Unfortunately, Fuko doesn't know much about this fun thing that he is talking about, and she definitely can't interact with the locals since touching her would literally kill them, and she doesn't speak Russian. However, on the beach, she bumps into a girl painting, and it turns out to be the spaceship girl with the force fields. However, Fuko doesn't know that. She doesn't seem to recognize Fuko, but can tell that she is from Japan, which she really loves. The girl points out that she is dressed in an outfit that looks a lot like a Japanese school uniform, but Fuko wouldn't know about that since she never went to high school. She notices the girl's painting and comments on how pretty it is, prompting the girl to pull out another canvas and ask Fuko to paint with her. While Fuko has painted before, she doesn't consider herself a good painter, so she was going to decline the offer, but then she remembers Andy telling her to have fun, and this would probably be fun. The two spend the evening painting, and the girl strikes up a conversation, asking Fuko if she likes things that change or things that stay the same. Personally, she loves things that stay the same and aren't swayed by the things around them, which is why she loves art so much. Fuko doesn't know how to answer a question like that, so she takes a little time to think about it, and they keep painting together. By nightfall, Fuko is finally done with her painting and shows it to the girl, but she is confused by the bright lights that Fuko painted around the moon. We learn that in this world, stars don't exist at all, but Fuko thought the night sky would look better with more lights in the sky, so she added some. She also has an answer to the girl's question about change. Up until 4 days ago, she had been stuck the exact same way and for years, but then she met this odd guy and a whole lot of stuff happened, including some groping, kidnapping, explosions, near-death experiences, and more explosions. But through all that, Fuko was able to change herself for the better. With that in mind, she would have to say that she really appreciates change. The girl doesn't agree with Fuko's answer, but says she understands what Fuko means, and as she does this, she walks out onto the lake and just stands on the water. She then pulls a big chunk of water out and has it levitating in the air, confusing and shocking Fuko. Andy then comes running out to the beach and tries to slash at the girl, but she is able to block it and pushes Andy back. As he falls, he calls her Gina and tells her she's going a little heavy on the makeup before sticking his landing next to Fuko. Fuko asks who the girl is, and he explains that she is the one that captured him 50 years ago. This means that Gina is at least above 60 right now. She says she received a briefing on what is going on here and knows they came here to try and kill her so they can get her spot on the 10 seats. But if they want to try and kill her, she's not going to make it easy for them. Fuko gets on Andy's back as they prepare for battle. Instead of an attack, Jenna goes in for a hug, but Andy isn't interested in embracing his opponent and draws his sword. Jenna finds him mean for not wanting to reunite after 40 years and attacking her the first chance he gets, but before anything else can happen, Fuko asks if she is the same one that caught Andy 50 years ago, and after a brief pause, she confirms saying she caught and supervised him while he was held captive by the Union. That doesn't make much sense to her since Jenna looks to be the same age as her. But Andy chimes in and says she was 16 back then, so she's got to be at least 66, right? But you should never bring up the age of the 60-year-old high school girl. She uses her powers to cover up Andy's mouth, and with no other way to release her hold, he chops off part of his face. Then Gina gets real down bad and tries kissing Andy's dismembered lips, but he disintegrates it before a new kink tag can be created. Andy regenerates his face and tells Fuko he needs to figure out a counter to Gina's power, but seeing him so close to her, Jenna yells at Fuko that she fell in love with Andy first, so she has dibs. When they first met, it was with her as the hunter and him as the hunted. She succeeded in capturing him, but all the seats at the table were taken, so Andy was locked up in a cell. Back then, she went to see him and apologized for capturing him since she was forced to follow orders, but Andy told her not to worry about it. He lost their fight, and he has nothing to hate her for. But he tells her that he will eventually break out, and when he does, he hopes to be able to have a rematch with her, and he'll make sure he doesn't lose a second time. And those words were the perfect combo to have her heart doing backflips for him. But 10 years later, he escaped from the cell without so much as saying a word to her, and then proceeded to go into hiding for the next 40 years. But after meeting Fuko, he changed his pattern and started going all over the place, leaving a clear trail that she could follow. While she was saying this, Andy goes, "Here's some grenades." Despite the blaze behind her, Jenna still remains unharmed and continues her speech, saying Shen had agreed to inform her first if he ever happened to find Andy, but then he went and challenged him. But some good came out of that, since the guy Shen came with was killed. Means there's a seat open at the table, and that's all she needs to make sure he keeps his freedom. Annie throws a flashbang which temporarily blinds her, but despite being disoriented, she still didn't drop the barrier around her. However, he is at least gathering some good intel on what kind of attacks work on her and what doesn't. Fuko asks about his war buddies that were supposed to help, but he says they are all dead, which makes sense cause they would all have been over 80 by now. But he tells her to relax because he will definitely figure out what it is that Jenna negates. And to do that, he goes Giga Brain analysis on everything he has seen her do up to this point. First, she solidified a lake, then she used some kind of telekinesis to make it float upward, and lastly, she can create invisible barriers and stairs. If he assumes her ability is to solidify stuff, then what is she solidifying to make her barriers? And if it were just some simple hardening, then he should still be able to cut through it with his sword. On the ground, Jenna throws her hat towards them, and as it flies past after destroying Andy's lower body, he sees something that gives him a good idea of what Jenna's ability is. As he lands, Jenna says he is being held back since he has to protect Fuko, and that things would have been a lot simpler if Fuko had just died back on that boat, but Andy doesn't care about that since, in his own words, whether it is fate or not, Fuko is his. once again hitting the word jackpot and flustering her. He's not gonna let her die until he does, so Gina, a little jealous, and is ready to charge and take Andy's head like last time so she can have him by her side forever. Fuko thinks it's crazy for Andy to challenge her directly after she caught him 50 years ago, but he says he finally figured out what Gina is negating, so he can beat her now. He puts a grenade in his mouth, making even Jenna go, "Wait, what the hell?" and then chops off his head and flings it into the sky. The grenade explodes, covering the beach in Andy juice, and he says he is sure of it now. With his hair still on fire, he says her ability is to negate the change in the physical form of matter, and she uses it to stop the change of air, creating those invisible barriers. Jin isn't too worried about Andy knowing her ability since there isn't anything he can do against it with undead, and while Andy agrees, he has Fuko here, and he regenerates his body through her shirt, asking for her help. After 3 episodes of craziness, Fuko has resigned herself as the unluck generator and presses her tig old biddies firmly against Andy's back for some quality skin contact. Janet gets riled up seeing Fuko's double Ds all over her man and is enraged because when it comes to her chest size. Wait, what chest? She starts saying that Fuko must have seduced him with those airbags of hers, but in 20 years they are bound to get saggy. However, Fuko declares her melons will be round and plump forever. Gina counters, saying she's the only one that can stay the same forever since her ability is unchanged. However, Ambi is quick to point out that her ability is an external targeter. There are 2 types of negator abilities, those like Andy's undead that only affect him and those like Fuko's unluck that only affect others. So with how she has been using Unchained, she is sure it can only affect external targets. She tries to claim she can use it on herself since she still looks the same after 50 years, but that is just the wonders of makeup making her look the same. As for the chest, again, what chest? And even the dummy thick wagon she'd be dragging has lost some of its suspension. In fact, he's pretty sure she can't use her power on any kind of organic material at all. Everything he just said is true, but that is part of the reason she is so angry about it. So she uses her power to slash at Andy, but he dodges and flies off. Andy tells her there's no need to be upset about it because he actually likes old lady ass and prefers it like that, but she is still angry. Andy is now able to dodge her attacks since he can see the air hands coming towards him. So that is one problem solved, but he still hasn't figured out how he'll be able to take down the barrier around her. Fuko speaks up because she noticed something, so Andy turns his body around still inside her shirt and asks her what she saw. She says Jima is clearly really angry at Andy and has a barrier around her for protection, that she's only walking towards them instead of running, and that seems odd. Andy realizes something and tells Fuko she did a great job noticing while his face is buried in her opie. He has now figured out how to get to her, so he just needs to find the seed of unluck that could be generated in order to use it to his advantage. However, as he is flying up, he bonks his head on something in the sky and falls to the solid lake. Lasers then shoot out, hitting Andy in the balls, but he's fine regardless. Jenna reminds them that she was here investigating a UMA that is supposed to be hiding out in the area, so she was using her ability to split the island into chunks in order to find it. She was only doing this because she had a quota to meet, but since Fuko and Ambi are here, she doesn't need to worry about filling that quota anymore, so she plans to end things now. She wants to be the same as she was back then and to be with the one she loves forever, so no matter how many people she had to hurt, she stayed in the organization so she could keep chasing after Andy. Andy is able to block the incoming blow and holds her off with his sword, saying that if anyone is going to die, then it is going to be him. But Gianna tells him there is no way that Fuko would ever be able to handle the heartless tasks that the Yumian would assign to her even if she managed to join. Andy notices something about Jenna's barrier in the meantime and finally has his plan all figured out. There is a small hole in the bottom of the barrier which she uses to walk around, but it's so small that he would only be able to fit his head in there to use the unluck that Fuko's chest has been charging up on him. But even if he did manage that, Gina would kick him out immediately, so he comes up with a strategy and dives underwater before resurfacing and using his blood to cover the barrier and prevent Jana from seeing what they are up to. They then stick the sword under her barrier and flip it over, exposing the hole, and as the chance presents itself, Fuko throws Andy's head inside. Jenna doesn't have the chance to react, and since Andy is inside the barrier, it will likely be something that is light-based since the only thing capable of breaking through are light particles, and in this case that means a death laser from the ship. The beam blows a hole straight through a mountain, and as Fuko watches on, the lake that had been solidified suddenly returns to liquid, meaning Gina's powers have been released. On the shore by the mountains, Andy sits next to a severely wounded Gina and gets on top of her, preparing to finish her off with one of his finger bullets, but Fuko runs up to stop him. He doesn't shoot Gina, but he tells Fuko that she doesn't have much time left to live. She was at the beck and call of the Union and has executed so many people for them, and yet nothing in the world has changed. She had thought their mission was to save the world, Maybe she was wrong. She tells them to leave because her anti-aging is wearing off and she doesn't want to be seen like this, but Andy pulls her close for a kiss and tells her a few wrinkles aren't going to make her any less beautiful. And moments later, she dies peacefully. Fuka was incredibly distraught by the death of Gina as she and Andy sit at a table in a closed restaurant. Andy is also devastated and talks about how Gina had always had a death wish, as every time she would come to visit him in his cell, she would always bring up how she has reservations about all the killing she was forced to do and would probably be better off dead. So in response, one time Andy told her once he escaped, he would put her on the top of his hit list if she wanted. At the time, he thought he was going along with an emo kid's joke. She smiled so much at the thought of having someone kill her that he realized she was actually serious, so Andy was the next best option. He thanks Fuko for helping him make Gina's wish come true, but Fuko has a wish of her own. She asks him if they can make a change so that no one is forced to suffer the same fate of murder like Gina, and Andy supports her wish to change the union since he likes the idea, and it will probably score him some affection points with Fuko. The union will be here to pick them up any minute now, so the thing they are going to have to do is scope out the place once they get in. They grab their drinks as they are about to take a drink and toast. Just then, a crack forms above them, and this is what Andy was waiting for, as it means the union has arrived. They get pulled up by this guy and find themselves falling through a tube and towards the table. Fuko is still a bit confused by everything, but Andy knows exactly what is going on and prepares a little welcome present for all the members of the union. He fires off 8 of his finger bullets at all of the members at the table, but these guys don't have a seat here for nothing and all stop the shots with no damage. Andy lands in his chair with style and his drink still in his hand, telling them it would have saved some time if they all just died. Shen remarks that they really are interesting, and the leader, Ju, says they are exactly as the reports had stated before inviting them to the union. We get a little introduction for all the members, though we still don't know what their negator abilities actually are. In order of ranks, we got Juiz, then Shen and Billy, followed by the child they kidnapped, Phil, followed by Tatiana and Ishin. Then there's Top and Nico. Fuko and Andy are 9 and 10 and try to look all cool by clicking their right ear, but Andy gets punched into a back wall by Tatiana. She's upset that Andy killed Gina, but the leader warns her that fighting between members is forbidden. Andy appreciates the temper that Tatiana has, and it seems he managed to slice up her hand while she punched him. She repairs her hand and is ready to go for round 2 when all of a sudden, she points a laser def cannon at Billy, and Andy points his sword at Fuko's neck. This is the ability of Juiz, and she asks the two if they are ready to settle down yet. Taishan apologizes since she doesn't want to kill Billy, and Billy seems really calm for someone with a death laser at point-blank range. Andy also says he won't fight anymore, and Juiz deactivates her ability. He apologizes to Fuko for putting her life in danger just now, but it gave him some insight into the abilities of the union members. They all take their seats, and Juiz calls for the meeting to begin as a floating book with teeth called Apocalypse pops out and starts giving out quests. Fuko and Andy both have no idea what is going on at the moment, but they just try to memorize as much information as possible. It shows 6 quests this time and has the first one as Capture the UMA Burn, with a participation count of 6 and a reward of an addition of an 11th seat to the table. Quest number 2 is one to capture the UMA Eat, with a participation count of 5 where the location of the negator Unburn is the reward. Third is the neutralization of the UMA language with a participation count of 1 and a reward of the unification of all the world's languages. As this goes on, Andy realizes that this must have been the quota that Jenna was talking about. Apocalypse continues and says the quest number 4 is to capture the negator Unseen. Participation count 1 and the reward is the location of the UMA call. Quest 5 is to capture UMA Pass with a participation count of 3 and the location of an item called the Artifact Rebellion as the reward. And finally, quest number 6 to capture UMA Spoil with the reward being the location of the negator Unrepair. It says they have until the 31st of August to complete all the quests, and if they don't, then it will result in the addition of the UMA Galaxy. But I don't know why he had to move his tongue like that. It orders them to choose, but Fuko is still hung up on the whole UMA Galaxy thing. Juiz asks Nico to run an analysis on what quests they will be able to accomplish with their current power, and he plugs himself in real quick to ask ChatGPT. He answers that they would only be reasonably capable of handling quests 1 through 3, and ideally, they should focus their efforts on the first quest, as the addition of an additional seat to the table is a huge benefit. He also suggests that they all give up on trying to catch the last one, as there is no good information on him and without knowing the limits of his ability, so they would like to avoid them. With that decided, Juiz mobilizes all team members to handle quests 1, 2, and 3 despite the penalty that comes with not accomplishing all the quests. Fuko asks Top what's with that talking book in the sky. So Top explains that the book is the first artifact ever found on Earth, and every time the Round Table opens it, it places some ridiculous tasks for them to complete. But if it is cleared, then they will be given a reward. Fuko asks if it is really worth going through all the trouble to follow the instructions of the book. That is the same thing that led Jenna to death, so she questions why they don't just ignore the book. Jui speaks up and declares that new rules have been added to the Earth, and once every 3 months, a new rule is applied again even if they don't do anything, so they decided to do something about it. Only those seated at the round table are allowed to accept quests, and it is too risky to let people with unpredictable powers roam free, which is why she ordered for Fuko to be killed. She apologizes for doing that and asks for her cooperation in performing the takes. Fuko is still greatly against the way of doing things here, so Juice tells her if she wants to change the way they handle things, then she should become the #1 and take that position away from her. The rank of a person is decided by who has contributed the most to finishing accomplishments. However, Andy has no time for chain of commands and runs up to Apocalypse and asks it which quest is the hardest to complete while prying its mouth open. It bites his hands off and says the 6th one is the hardest, to capture UMA spoil, and Andy accepts the quest. A few weeks later, Fuko is being dressed by Mui, a girl that is Shen's disciple. She wishes Fuko good luck on the quest, but Fuko asks why she isn't coming with them. Mui explains that she is neither a negator nor a member of the Round Table, so she is not authorized to ever take part in a quest. Since she can't be there directly, she asks Fuko to please take care of Shen while she is there, but Fuko doesn't think she is up for that task. And right then, Shen comes in chasing around Andy, who doesn't want it put on clothes. He accidentally bumps into Fuko, touching her face, and you know what that means. Magma shoots off the wall and burns all of Andy's life away from home. Luckily, he is still fine cause he can regenerate easily. Andy doesn't want to wear a suit for a company, however, Andy doesn't know about the features that the suit comes with. There is a bulletproof and laser-proof function in the suit. While they were still arguing, a UMA attacked the base with the ability to control any article of clothing he wants and is heading towards them. His power is to turn into the clothes that one most desires, but once he has bewitched you with the clothes, he takes full control of your body. He punches Andy in the face, but Andy gets back up and headbutts his lights out. However, once the body is unable to move, it will seek out a new host like Venom. And it finds that new host in Mui. It begins battling with Mui's body, and Shen's power won't be effective here because she is being controlled, so Fuko takes matters into her own hands and touches her, causing a brick to fall on her head straight out of Looney Tunes. Now that she is unable to move, the UMA tries to go after Fuko, but Andy saves her and has it latch onto him instead. However, it doesn't turn into clothes immediately because Andy's most desired clothes are ones that regenerate when ripped and come to him when called. The UFA takes it as a challenge and transforms, but gets struck with the unluck from Andy touching Fuko when he saved her. They now turn into a suit for Andy and cannot leave him anymore. At the same time, a report comes in on the location of Spoil, so they head out to New York to confront him. So here they are, trucking down the Nevada roads in the blistering heat. Fuko is excited to finally get to see some of the United States, and that was part of the reason Andy opted to use a truck instead of a helicopter, because he just has a bunch of them in storage. Late into the evening, Andy asks her if she wants to just ditch the mission for a little bit and head over to Vegas for a good time. However, Fuko is a diligent worker and tells him they need to accomplish their mission before they can go have fun. It's very important that they get to. Yeah, Fuko forgot the name of the place they were going. She checks the paperwork to refresh her memory a little and reads the report on the incident that they are responding to. In the city, there were sightings of a walking corpse going around and doing things a corpse should be able to do. The cause was unknown, but the witnesses to the event were successfully memory wiped to prevent panic. Upon further investigation, it was found that the corpse was a man from a rural part of the country called Longing. Shen pops his head down from the roof to mention that the place is also commonly used to film cowboy movies, but more importantly, Fuko wants to know why he is hanging out on top of that truck. It's a simple story, and he was trying to leave Shen behind, so he did what any normal person would do in this situation. He jumped into the top of the truck and stuck his feet through the roof to keep himself attached as they drove for thousands of miles on end. Fuko says it's dangerous for him to be out there like that, so he should come inside, and this kindness brings a tear to Shen's eyes, but frowned Andy's face. Now that everyone is inside the truck, Fuko asks Shen if the report is really related to Spoil. He answers her question with another question and asks what she thinks a guy named Spoil would be able to do. And it's pretty obvious that it is going to be related to the walking corpse sighting. He has no idea why the corpse went all the way over to New York, but he's sure he will be able to find Spoil if they go to Longing. He and his legion of homemade zombies. Fuko is worried that they won't be able to capture such a monster alive, but Shen tells her not to worry since their reconnaissance team had gone to scope out the town ahead of time and managed to get some audio from when they were putting up a barricade for the town. Fuko asks if the investigation team made it back in one piece, but Shen just stares at her and starts playing the recording. We hear the team talking as they were putting up the barricade, but we soon hear the sounds of zombies approaching and the people don't seem to be handling it so well. One got bitten, and then we heard gunshots, so I think it is safe to assume they won't be making it back in one piece. Or even if they do, it will be with holes in their bodies. The recording has already traumatized Fuko, so she asks Andy what he thinks of the situation. He doesn't give much of an answer, but Shen continues saying it would be difficult to defeat Spoil unless Andy were to go all out against him, but he says there will be no need to go that far. That night, Fuko can't sleep from all the trauma she experienced that day and is sitting on top of the wall thinking. Shen comes up to join her and tells her not to worry because both he and Andy will take out Spoil, so she won't have to deal with him personally. However, Fuko still wishes to be able to participate and help them capture Spoil, and Shen questions if she was doing this for the sake of Jenna's dream to bring change to the Union. But Fuko has her own reasons for needing to be a part of the team that does this because the reward for capturing Spoil is receiving the location of the negator Unrepair. And with an ability like Unrepair, it may be able to counter Andy's regeneration and allow him to finally die like he had always wanted to. She apologizes to Shen because he was basically forced to come along with them because Andy chose this quest by himself. But he says it's not all bad, as since this quest is one of the rather difficult ones, he might get to see the serious version of Andy Victor, the god of victory, and not the lackluster one that we have here. The next day, they arrive at the town of Longing. It is just across the bridge and houses thousands of zombies that are being controlled by Spoil. They arrive at the wall, and Shen suggests that they use stealth to sneak in, but Andy goes, who needs stealth. I got a rocket launcher and proceed to blast a hole straight through the wall. Dozens of zombies come pouring out of the town, and as their job description, they must handle all anomalies. Andy asks whether it would be possible for them to return back to normal, but they have already been altered physically, so there is no way they would be able to return as normal people. That tells Andy all he needs to know about the situation, and he prepares to ram his way through the crowd with no time to spare. The truck plugged through the embodies like water, and as the truck comes to a halt, Andy comes flying out the window and chops his arm and leg off before landing in the middle of them with his sword in hand. He yells out that he is going to kill all of them, but if any of them still have the mental capacity to tell him where Spoil is, then they had better duck to avoid the incoming attack. He gets into stance, and with his arm cut off, he begins to spin in a circle and starts chopping off all the heads of the zombies that are left standing and pressing Shen, who is sitting next to an airbagged Fuko. After Andy was done with the massacre, he finds that there is one zombie that wasn't completely mindless yet. The zombie girl walks alongside Andy as he tells the others that he has found someone to take them to Spoil. Fuko is just going along with the craziness at this point and is about to get down from her seat in order to follow Andy, but Shen has something to say first. This place is dangerous, and he had warned Andy to be cautious because they are dealing with a UMA here. UMAs are different from negators in the fact that they are rules themselves and are known to completely ensnare people randomly. Negators have to do something to activate their powers, like Shen needing to look at a person from a certain distance, and Fuko's unluck activates after she's touched a person. But UMAs have no such restrictions and have an area within which they are guaranteed to hit their opposition if they are within the specified region. He now sees that Andy has a timer on his stomach, which likely means that he will spoil once it reaches 0. However, Andy doesn't seem to mind all that much since something like this wouldn't be able to kill him. And if it does, then that's okay too because he wanted to die regardless. Once the timer reaches 0, Andy's body starts to decay, but just as soon as that happened, he regenerates his hand back to normal. Then it decayed again and it became clear that the decay was a constant effect. So with how things are set up, anyone who enters the town will be turned into a zombie. The zombie girl that Andy is with has something she wants to say and pulls him closer. He listens and finds out that the girl knows where Spoil is, but she has a condition in order for her to tell him what he wants to know. So Andy picks her up and tells the others that he is going to get married. It was the zombie girl's last wish to get married and have a honeymoon. So after Andy is done clapping the zombie cheeks, he will be back so they can go to find Spoil. However, as Shen is yelling out to Andy to remember that the objective of the mission is to capture Spoil and not kill him, a kid pops his head out of an underground tunnel, which Fuko sees but doesn't mention to Shen and starts chasing after the boy. And before Shen knew it, she was gone. She runs down into the tunnel to find the kid, but Shen catches up to her and tries to get her to think calmly. If she goes any farther, she is going to get herself spoiled. And if that kid already ran down that far, then that means he has already been afflicted. The boy says he's correct while pointing a gun at the two of them. They have been cursed to spoil as well, but their timers are just longer than the others. They fear outsiders because the only people who would come here are those that want to eradicate all the zombies, and that would include them because they are about to become zombies. That is why they are standing right outside the area where the curse would affect them. Well, Fuko doesn't think his logic is wrong, so to prove him wrong, she uses her ordinary teenage legs to dash forward and grab the boy that was pointing a gun, ready to shoot at her before he could react at all, afflicting herself with the spoil curse, and since everyone is doing it, then Shen does it as well. Back to Andy, he has officially gotten married to the zombie girl and she thanks him for making her dream come true. So now she has one final request for him. Kill that monster that is doing this to them. Andy says his mission was to capture that thing and not kill, but who is he to refuse the request of the bride on her wedding day? He slashes at it, forcing Spoil to reveal its true form and attack. The building around him crumbles, but the rest of the zombies inside protected him, showing that they still have some level of thought left in them. Spoil is standing across from him, so Andy uses his hands to strike a bell and knock it into Spoil's face, alerting all the other zombies to the location of the person that did this to them and having them come for their revenge. And he is poised, ready to kill that thing once and for all. As the zombies race towards the town center, Andy pulls the sword out of his back while at the same time, Fuko is underground introducing herself to the boy. He says his name is Ken, and that he is still in nursery school. And he's pretty impressive for someone who just got out of diapers. He's the oldest among his friends by a few months, so he took it upon himself to protect them all from danger. Fuko praises him for being such a responsible boy, but they are here to help them. So she asks him to tell her everything he knows about what happened to this town and why they haven't turned into zombies yet. He agrees to give her the information and begins to talk, saying everything was normal up to a week ago, and they were happily walking along the streets with their teacher, but then a dark ball appeared in the sky above them and started speaking. It was clearly Spoil. He was elated to find a town like this and eagerly began afflicting them and causing zombification at varying rates. Their teacher saw what was going on, acting on instinct, took the kids to the town's tornado bunker to keep them safe. There was a bunch of water and food rations down there, so she asked them to hold out for a while, but they were still worried about her. Knowing she was going to turn soon, she didn't join them in there, but left some reassuring words that she wouldn't let herself die until she found a handsome guy to marry her. And even as her eyes began to bleed from the spoiling, she maintained the smile on her face and shut the kids in the bunker. As he finishes recounting the events that led them here, one of the kids starts crying, and as the others go to check on her, they find that she only has 40 more seconds before she becomes a zombie. Ken comforts her, saying help is on the way, and tries to get her mind off the impending doom by reminding her of her dream of opening a flower shop. This gets her to cheer up and start talking about how she wants to sell sunflowers, and as she cheerily speaks, her number goes back up, giving her another 5 hours. It seems that raising your spirits keeps the Spoil from activating, so with the information they just got from him, Ken asks them to go stop Spoil, who right now is currently engaged in battle with Andy, as he flies around swinging his bloody sword while also carrying his zombie teacher pride. Fuko and Shen crawl out from the bunker and are surprised to see that he is fighting alongside the zombies to defeat Spoil. Though, they don't seem to actually be contributing much to the fight. But since they are forced to live in such a state by Spoil, it is the least Andy could do to let them join in on the fight against him. Andy spots them on the ground and asks for their help keeping his wife safe while he fights Spoil, so he tosses her down to Shen. At the same time, her students come up to the surface and see her, recognizing that she is their beloved teacher. She may have turned into a zombie, but she did manage to stay true to her statement and found a husband before she died. The children are just happy to see her again and don't mind that she is a zombie now, still treating her like the person they know and love, and for that she is very grateful. Fuko finds this entire moment to be very touching when she gets bumped into by a zombie as it charges at Spoil, but as it ran past her, it touched her face, meaning it was now afflicted by unluck as it continued to charge. As it got up to Spoil, a signboard fell from above, smashing into Spoil and killing the zombie on the ground. Seeing this, Andy gets a terrific idea and instructs all the zombies to go touch Fuko's cheeks to get afflicted with unluck. They could also touch her face as well if they wanted to. With unluck affecting them, it will become living time bombs and will likely die from it, but it will also do a fair bit of damage to Spoil. Fuko thinks Andy is being unreasonable since even if they are already undead, there is no way they would willingly take on the full force of unluck. But now knowing that touching Fuko will allow her to do some damage to Spoil, the zombie teacher runs up and hugs her. At first, Fuko doesn't want to let this happen because with what she has learned about her, she is a really good person, but she already accomplished her life goal of marrying a guy like Andy, so she can die in peace. Her only regret would be not making it to the honeymoon phase. Fuko gets the message with a somber expression, takes off her gloves and touches zombie teacher, giving her a huge dose of unluck due to how much she cares for her. Zombie teacher then starts running straight for Spoil with everything that she has got, and the kids, not understanding what is going on, try to chase after her but are stopped by Shen. Zombie teacher continues her race to get to Spoil and gets squashed in his hand, but the unluck still activates and Spoil stumbles, falling backwards and landing on an explosives storage house, which blows it up with a lot of damage dealt. Andy yells out to keep the pressure coming so they can finally defeat it. So now all the zombies are in and start rushing towards Fuko, who is also ready with her hands out touching every zombie that rushes past her, while she takes the kids and puts them back in the bunker to wait this out. The zombies all continue forward, now dosed in unluck, and latch themselves onto Spoil as it takes effect, and has several more explosive crates land on Spoil. However, even after all of that, Spoil isn't looking worse for wear all that much, and to make matters worse, Fuko and Shen reveal to him that they have roughly 11 minutes left before they become zombies as well, so knowing this, Andy decides to skip the initial goal of capturing Spoil and go back to the plan of killing it quickly before they die. Shen is opposed to the idea since the mission was to capture him alive, so if they kill him here, the Union will be angry that they wasted an opportunity to gain a reward, but that is something to be worried about if you actually manage to survive. Just then, Spoil opens his mouth and begins sucking in all the zombies in the surrounding area, forcing Andy to anchor himself into the ground as everything around them gets sucked up into Spoil. He uses his blood rockets to put some distance between them and Spoil while he is doing his throat goat activities, and as he finishes, a dark cloud surrounds him and he is able to power up once more. Shen asks Andy if he was able to figure out the rules of Spoil's ability, and he more or less has it down. It can spoil inorganic material at will, but when it comes to living beings, it always has to use a timer, at which point once the timer runs out, the person would be turned into a zombie and would be unable to do it. With the rules that they are aware of, they prepare to engage Spoil in combat once more, but fires a special beam cannon at them, forcing Shen to use his ability to mess with his aim and cause him to miss them. Spoil doesn't understand why he just missed that shot, but he soon catches on to the fact that they are likely from the Union and here to kill it. The battle continues to rage on, and the lasers it fires would cause anything it touches to immediately rot away, so Andy tries getting in close to do some damage, but that too proves to be difficult as the closer you get to its body, the more your body begins to spoil. It knocks Andy to the ground and realizes that he must be a death negator, but with the accelerated rate of decay being imposed on him with the power-up, his regeneration shouldn't be able to keep up for long, and as for the other two, they have already been afflicted with the curse and are just waiting to be turned into zombies, so it gets up close to them to mock their existence. But this moment gives Shen a good idea. As he runs away, Spoil mocks him, thinking he is trying to outrun the curse, but he had something else in mind. While he is gone, Spoil takes the time to mock Fuko some more, questioning why humans find it necessary to try to hold on to a body that won't even last a century in the first place, but she is not rattled by his question and curtly replies that it is because we humans have dreams. Dreams which we wish to see come true, and even if he wants to spoil her body based on a whim of his, she is not going to let him put an end to her dream of living a fulfilling life as a normal girl. As she says this, the timer on her stomach begins to go back up as the will to keep her dream alive prevents her from decaying. Spoil is taken aback by Fuko being able to counter his ability, and Shen soon returns as well with his own dream of becoming the strongest human ever. This was the end of episode 7. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.